about who you are and what you kind of do.
Always a good place to start. So hi everyone, I'm Charlotte. I am the founder of Know the Origin. Not the usual backdrop that I would have in a call, but welcome to pandemic life. I started a company called Know the Origin. And we are basically a sustainable marketplace for brands. So we sell just over about 100 ethical brands, and kind of as of September it'll be about 150 ethical brands, focusing a lot around sustainable supply chains in fashion, as well as like plastic-free products that help people live more consciously. I started the business about 4 years ago, so kind of started as our own label, so working with loads of like amazing fair trade and organic producers around India. So I kind of at the time was like studying at London College of Fashion when the Rana Plaza factory collapsed in Bangladesh. So it was a factory that was making clothes for a lot of high street retailers like Mango, Gap, Primark, Zara, lots of others. And then this factory collapsed, basically over 1,100 people died, and over like 2,500 people were injured or trapped in the rubble. And I worked when I was at uni part-time at ASOS. In their buying department, and we were loading like 200 or 300 dresses just in like jersey dresses, which is like the kind of cotton dresses, so it's like very fast moving fashion product, and I loved it. Like I love kind of creating product and seeing things like come to life, but I think kind of when this factory collapsed, I was like really taken aback that actually I hadn't, like, despite studying buying, I'd never really actually thought about where things had properly come from. We were taught a lot of skills at university to like cut prices and work with suppliers in a way that's like beneficial to the business, but you're not really taught to connect with the humans behind every stage of the supply chain. And Rana Plaza was the first time that I really stopped to think about this in a really big way. So I went out to Bangladesh and spent quite a few months. I took some time out of university, like living in the community where the collapse happened. I spent quite a lot of time with survivors and people that had just had their lives like ripped apart by the production of cheap clothes. I spent a lot of time like hearing women's stories and men's stories as well, but it was mostly women. Like 99% of the people that worked in the factory were women. And yeah, it was just a really kind of made me question everything that I thought that God had like given me to do in terms of like really being passionate about like product development and creating like really nice fashion products, to then suddenly being like, oh my gosh, I can't work in this industry, what am I doing? Like every sort of graduate's worst nightmare, kind of 50 grand into your degree, kind of having a meltdown about even wanting to do that very niche degree. So yeah, I did my dissertation on whether the industry as a whole could be ethical and sustainable, and I spent a lot of time traveling around India and Bangladesh, learning from people, spending a lot of times in like cooperatives, like factories, good and bad, trade unions that were working to sort of educate and like help train like women on their rights so that they could ensure that they weren't working sort of above and beyond the hours that they had to. And yeah, I just I guess that's how it all really started, was like thinking about, can there be a better way of doing this? And you know, I don't want to wear products that have been made by people that haven't been paid properly and have been, or have like basically died to make our clothes. And so that was where I started, was like I really wanted to build like the most sustainable brand I could, but also make it kind of affordable and not look like gross and itchy, because I think a lot of ethical products, sometimes we buy them because of the story behind them as opposed to the fact that they're like a really excellent product. Yeah, so I guess that's where we started, like started with our own label, and then kind of a year or so ago really saw that in order for this sustainable movement to grow, it needs to be first and foremost a really easy experience. Whether people like it or not, our culture is moving towards convenience and speed, and I think in order for ethical to be taken on, and kind of accessible and enjoyable by the masses, it has to like be able to have, you know, that like richness of choice and that speed and that like beautiful aesthetic, because ultimately we don't buy clothes because we feel sorry for the people that have made it. We buy them because we like them. So I decided we still make our own label and work with really amazing producers and suppliers, but we also work with a whole other wealth of brands now that are on the platform, that basically all have like amazing impacts behind what they do, from kind of like every pair that's sold of a pair of socks, a pair is given to a local homeless shelter, from brands that give 100% of their proceeds to supporting women affected by domestic violence. Like there's so many different stories and impacts behind the brands that we sell and curate. Sorry, I'm over talking. The joys of the only one being not on mute.
Oh no, that's fab. So what was kind of like your thoughts on fast fashion before your degree, and like your kind of journey with fast fashion personally?
So I, while I was at university, was totally addicted to it. I loved it. Like I loved like buying clothes, and I loved like the newness. And I just didn't really see that there was anything wrong with that. I had like, while I was at university, one of the ways that I funded it was to like buy, I used to buy kind of clothes from charity shops and like sell them on eBay for a lot more money. So I was well versed with the high street. I had kind of heard of these terms of sweatshops, but didn't really know like how it linked to what I was doing. I had no idea that anything to do with slavery was in the production of our clothes. I had no idea that the amount of like environmental resource that goes into one of those t-shirts that is sold for £3, even right down to like the water usage. Like one t-shirt uses about 2,700 litres of water, which is massive, for a product that is hailed as something that's disposable. So yeah, I would say my relationship with fast fashion whilst at university was a strong one. And yeah, it's definitely been something that, you know, when Rana Plaza happened, was something that really changed quite dramatically overnight. I opened my cupboard and I looked in the labels of all of the clothes that I had in there, and I thought, I don't know a single one of where these items have come from, and the impacts that they've supported. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to do other questions at the end or throw them in now. But Tracy's asked, oh sorry,
sorry. I think maybe, yeah, do them as we're going along, and then, yeah, depending on time, we'll see.
Okay, fab. Well, Tracy's asked, has ethical fashion become part of the fashion degree curriculum?
It's definitely something that's becoming more and more like topical. When I was at university, which was like I graduated 5 years ago, I had to basically fight my lecturer to be able to do a topic on sustainability. I was the only one in my year group that was doing it. Whereas now I'd say I get like 100 requests a week for like dissertation interviews. It's becoming like a real shift, I think, in people's focus. I know that my lecturer, like once I handed in my dissertation, like apologized for saying that it wasn't a relevant subject for me to do, and now she's actually created the course curriculum at London College of Fashion so that the first module that every buying and merchandising student does is now on like a sustainable brand. So I think, you know, things are changing. Yeah, it's just whether they're changing fast enough, that's another question.
And obviously when we buy clothes, they have an impact, but that can feel really far away, like where the impact is felt. So we were wondering if you could talk a little bit about like the impact of the clothes we buy and the link to modern day slavery from like high street shops that we might buy from.
Mm-hmm. So whether we like it or not, the clothes and the food that we eat have passed through the hands of some of the world's most vulnerable and often poor communities. For example, one t-shirt on the high street will have most probably passed through about 150 different people's hands before it gets to the shop where we buy it. And if you kind of question the fact that, you know, that t-shirt has, at the price point that it's being sold at, has like a massive environmental impact. So for example, I would like bore you with the technical details that I find really exciting, but it goes through like to get a t-shirt, the like cotton plant is grown in the ground, and that takes like 6 months, and then it goes through like so many processes of like picking the cotton, sorting the cotton, pulling the fiber out, like spinning it, carding it, knitting it, dyeing it, like sewing it, cutting it. There's so many, like hundreds of stages, and yeah, and every stage is done mostly by people. The environmental impact is so huge, and I really saw that once I graduated, I spent a lot more time out in India, kind of tracing back the supply chain right to cotton farmer, and I saw like some of the places and impacts that happen. In India alone, there's been basically the largest cases of like recorded suicide. So in the last 16 years, one Indian cotton farmer has committed suicide every 30 seconds as a result of the like basically monopolization of like GM seeds. And that when you like map out the entire impact of fashion, like I think you would just be like blown away to almost being paralyzed, to feeling like you can't do anything. I would fully recommend wholeheartedly watching the True Cost film, because that really starts to map some of the impacts of what is really going on behind the clothes that we buy. I think where your question was about where slavery comes in, wasn't it? Yeah, just checking before I go off on a tangent. So one of the biggest stages is, or that I've seen anyway, is in the spinning stage. So this is basically where you take the fiber that's the cotton, and you spin that basically into like a thread that can be made to like weave the fabric. There's been like a huge like trafficking schemes that have happened. So for example, there's one called the Sumangali scheme in southern India, where basically it's been reported that over 200,000 girls have been trafficked into this apprenticeship scheme, basically where they're told, you know, if you come like if you come with us for 3 years, at the end of the 3 years you'll get like a lump sum payment, and you'll have all these skills, and we'll teach you how to work. And basically the girls are like moved around so many different factories that they never receive any money. There's been huge cases of like sexual physical assaults in the factories. There's been cases of like girls as young as 13 having cotton fibre pumped out of their stomach because they weren't given masks. So a huge amount of, just disgusting things going on in the production of our clothes. And that's often the thing that is spoken about is like the kind of unjust condition in which the like piece of clothing is made, but actually the biggest impact is often the production of the fabrics and the fibers. So yeah, Stop the Traffic have done quite a lot of amazing work with kind of helping and bringing to light a lot of issues around modern slavery in the cotton industry. And also International Justice Mission have a lot of resources online about, they've just done a big campaign about like stopping slavery at the source, and basically helping you learn more about where things come from.
So Bruce has asked, as a 50-something male who has little interest in how I look and won't throw any item away, is it fair to say that this issue is particularly relevant to younger generations? Has this issue got worse, or has it always existed?
I think it's always existed, but it's something that's definitely got a lot worse with the speed at which we're now producing. I would say this issue is fully relevant to you unless either you don't wear clothes or I think it's fully relevant to you, because I really hope you do. Even if you've had those clothes a long time, unless you know the exact origin of where the cotton's been picked, where it's been sewn, dyed, any of those stages. Like there's a high proportion that a lot of the clothes that we're wearing today have been made by people that haven't been paid, that which is a heavy, like it's you're probably logging onto this call and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like terrible news for my Monday night. I've optionally come onto this Zoom, but yeah, I think it's amazing that we know about these things, and that then we can look for brands that are doing things differently, because there are a lot of brands out there that are making sure that they're not like, for example, like mixing fibers in their clothes. Like a lot of the fast fashion brands are putting cotton with like polyester or other things, and this basically means that the product can't be recycled or broken down in the same way. So yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about how this all ties in with your faith, and maybe a bit about what the Bible says about slavery?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, how this ties in with my faith, I guess I was brought up in by quite crazy parents, in the sense that we didn't usually do the like go and have like a beach holiday. Like we did that sometimes, but we spent a lot of time in Mexico working with local churches, volunteering and helping to build houses for people that didn't have any form of living accommodation. And I think being around from such a young age poverty and privilege, and understanding the like, I guess, the world a little bit more, and like has really, like, I don't think I could have worked in something that wasn't making a difference or doing good. I think the Bible is like very clear. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And yeah, I think, and like the Bible is so clear as well. There's that other verse that speaks about like loving the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. The second of these commandments is to love your neighbor as yourself. There is no greater commandment than these. And like, who is our neighbor? Like, our neighbor is our global neighbor. It's the person that is picking the cotton that we are wearing. It's the person that's is everyone. And you know, to love that person as yourself is a really hard hard thing to get your head around sometimes. And like, you know, is it loving to like buy something that is keeping someone in slavery or supporting a system that is creating that? So I guess for my faith, like the more that I read the Bible, like the more I understand that God and Jesus is about like loving and serving and like creating like really strong systematic change with like justice at its core. And like that is what I guess I'm trying to do with my work. I know that I'm not cut out to build houses or you know, work in like a different form of like doing that justice aspect, like charity or something. I know that like God has given me a very like specific set of like passions and strength, and that looks like creating clothing. And I think to do that in a way that is loving people is something that the fashion industry is really missing. So I guess for me, that's kind of how my faith ties in. And like, we get asked questions all the time, like we get people being like, well, why are you doing what you're doing? And you're able to have like incredible conversations and actually just like creating something that is really excellent. I think is also like a testament to God as well, like creating something that is like really good. Yeah, because I think ultimately like one of the first things in Genesis is that God creates and like creates the world. And yeah, so whether you think of yourself as a creative person or not, like he's made us in his image. And yeah, so I think that's kind of why I do what I do.
I'm just gonna say, oh sorry Freya, I'm just gonna say please keep putting your questions in the chat. I'm just looking at the time, but if we answer the questions that we've prepared for a bit, and then Charlotte can answer all your questions after. But please just keep putting questions in. But yeah, thank you guys.
What are some of like the best ways that we can kind of like make a difference? Is it like petitions? Is it boycotting? What is kind of like the best way for us to go about kind of making change?
I think so I'm not, a lot of people say boycotting is the way. Personally, I feel that it actually can have a really negative impact on people that we often by withdrawing money and jobs, sometimes in a way that we don't see or understand. I think one of the most powerful ways to make a difference is, rather than putting your money into something that is like bad and broken, like choosing alternate brands that you want to like invest your time and money into. There's like hundreds of incredible ethical brands that have come up in the last few years. So I'd be looking for brands that are certified in some way or another. That's the first like really easy thing that you can look for. So whether they're Fair Trade, Soil Association, 1% for the Planet brands are amazing, B corporations, just because they have like a third level of accountability. So that's one way that you can make a difference. The second way is, I think, supporting anti-trafficking charities like International Justice Mission that are working to stop slavery at their source. So like choosing the ethical option, stopping slavery at the source. So there's IJM, there's Hope for Justice, do a lot within this sphere as well. There's also charities that are working to advocate for workers' rights, so things like Label Behind the Label. They do like an amazing sort of mailer that has loads of information. War on Want is another really great NGO that you can like look into. I would look at things like watching the True Cost film, because I think you know, until we're educated and we fully understand like what it is that we're dealing with, I think that's something that can be really powerful. And I think also like not beating yourself up. I think like when I first, like everyone's on a journey and it looks different for everyone how they're going to do like living ethically, and I think often people are like, this is right, this is wrong, and like actually we live in a big murky grey world where everything we do has impacts. So just because it's kind of right for one person doesn't mean it's right for another person. And I think doing what we do with like love, because I think often like today, for example, I used like a reusable cup, not a reusable cup, like just I got a coffee from Pret and I didn't have a reusable because they wouldn't take it, and someone was like, oh my gosh, you're not using like, you know, that kind of thing. And it's just like, actually, you know, everyone's doing what they can do and like not beating people up when they're like still trying to do a good thing. I think an easy way to make a difference is like using less plastic. So for example, just like having things like plastic bags in your like car, so when you go shopping, like taking like net bags so you can put things like apples and stuff if you buy them loose. Supporting, especially at this time, like local butchers, you know, trying to buy things locally, because that reduces the impact so much of how far that product or food has travelled.
So I think we're going to go on to the questions in the chat. So we've got one from Annalena. I think it's amazing that you chose to meet with actual women in India, Bangladesh, etc. What were their views on fast fashion? Were they thankful to be working at all, or would they rather not been working in those circumstances?
I think people are proud of what they do. They love what they do. It's a lot of like the communities that I visited had been sewing and had it, like that skill had been like passed down for generations. So incredible amount of pride, and people enjoyed it. I think there was like definitely in places like a huge amount of sadness about the fact that some women were like unable to get or be paid or have the power or authority to like get that payment. So I think I think it's very easy to be like, oh, people are really struggling and not being paid and hating what they're doing and working in a factory, and like, but people love their job, and I think they just want to do it in a way that's not dangerous and, you know, getting paid properly.
And somebody has asked, are you able to share any good news stories about where buying power used well has had a positive impact?
Yeah, 100%. So we I'm like, which one? So we work with one factory in India that is the most amazing factory. It's in Calcutta. It's called Free Step Factory. It basically works with, we work with women that have chosen to leave the red light district. And the factory is leveled, so when women first come into the factory, they're given a high level of counselling and therapy, and taught basically how to sew. And then as you progress up the levels in the factory, it becomes more complex and higher paid. But that factory is a massive hub for Jesus, basically. It was started by a couple of missionaries from Australia, and it's incredible to see like women meet God like through work, and also to see lives transformed and people have safety and shelter and money and sort of ways to support their family and not be pressured into making decisions that they don't want to make. So, I mean, at every single stage, there's huge impacts, as I mentioned. We work with a lot of like 100% owned like farmer cooperatives, and a lot basically with fair trade, you pay like a base level, but then you also pay like a fair trade premium. So these premiums go into like the local community and they vote on what they want to use that money for. So yeah, we've seen like whole communities like building like schools and roads to be able to trade better. So I think there's huge amount of impacts. And then you know, on our like closer to home side, there's one brand that we work with that's kind of a buy a pair, share a pair type model, and they've like been able to give away like thousands of pairs of socks to people that have been trapped in homelessness around the UK. Yeah, so loads of positive impacts of yeah, when things are done properly, what can happen. And I think that's super exciting as well, because at the moment our purchasing is like 0.01% is ethical or like through sustainable brands, and actually like as that grows, those impacts will become like, yeah, richer and wider.
Awesome. We've got a question from Amulet who says, you spoke about how much water cloves use. Could you please elaborate on the impacts of dyeing on water sources, as well as the impacts of conventional chrome tanned leather production on water pollution?
So I'm not too sure on leather. We tend to work with cotton, and we've stayed away from using leather at any stage. Yeah, just because I think if you can use a product that isn't meat, so a lot of the we source sort of bags and accessories that are going to be launching next week, and they're all made with recycled plastic bottles. But in terms of the dyeing process, when you get a cotton t-shirt when it's first made, it's often this like kind of greyish colour, which like kind of murky white, and even to get a cotton t-shirt white, it has to be dyed, and sort of in these like huge massive vats, and often that water is just kind of comes out of the factories and into like local streams and rivers, and these will be like local water sources that often a lot of communities are bathing in, drinking in, and these dyes contain some of the world's most deadly chemicals. There was a t-shirt that came into the UK that was being made for H&M, and it was tested here, and it was reported that it had fat. So we have this thing in the UK called the deadly dozen. So it's 12 chemicals that we're actually not allowed to use because they basically just cause cancer or jaundice or like really nasty impacts. And this t-shirt basically had like 5 out of the 12 of these chemicals in it. And actually our skin is like the largest organ on our body, and like we should not be putting stuff on it that contains these horrendous horrendous chemicals. So I think often when we look at clothing, we think that or well, I don't know, when I first started looking into sustainability, I thought like, oh, organic is something for like people that shop in Waitrose or that want to spend like extra money on their vegetables. But actually it's a way of producing and like a crop without using these chemicals. It's a much more natural approach, and it also means that the way it affects farmers in terms of like for every row of like crop that's like planted, a row of food also has to be planted in between. So it basically means that even if the crop or the yield of like the crop that the farmer is growing is not great, then there's still like food there, which means that then often the farmers don't have to sort of succumb to like local loan sharks and that kind of situation. So I'm like the biggest advocate of any form of organic. I think that it's rain fed, it's natural, a lot more natural than the kind of processes that we're using at the moment with cotton. I think I've tried really hard to find within our supply chain there's like ways that you can like vegetable dye clothing and things, but just when you wash it sometimes you get a lot of like color leakage. And so we've gone for an approach, we're still using industrial dyeing, but basically it's like the only place in India where it's completely zero waste. So basically all the water comes back into the factory. It's filtered through like multiple different processes, and then it comes out as drinking water. And I've actually drank a pint of the water, so nothing is wasted. The sludge that is produced is then turned into bricks, and some of the other waste is turned into manure that can go onto the field again. So I think we found like a good alternative way of doing it, but it costs us like 4 or 5 times what it does to conventionally produce. So I guess it's just about what as a business you're investing into. At the moment they're saying basically that in the last few years the cotton is producing the land is producing 10 times less than what it was like a mere few years ago, and that's because of climate change. So like whether businesses like it or not, they're going to have to start sitting up and taking notice, because they're not going to be able to produce at the speed that they are right now in a few years' time. So that's why you'll start seeing on the high street a lot more brands opting for like, bring us back your clothes and we'll give you £10 off, because actually fabrics are running out, the land is not producing what it was, and actually they need to find alternate and new fabrics.
Thanks, Charlotte, for that. That's really great, and you said so much in that as well, and it leads on really well to what we're talking about next week on environmental justice. Because of time, we're just gonna wrap up with a couple of short questions. So just quickly, what brands or what ethical shops would you recommend, and maybe not just fashion shops, but what about some people have been asking about like furnishings and bedding and cushions and things like that. What do you recommend with that?
So I think before you buy anything, just like, do you need it? Just really like thinking about that, because I'm sure if you have a look in your wardrobe, you have a lot in there already. So just really like questioning, like, am I going to wear this? Am I going to use this like over 30 times? That's what I tend to do before I buy anything. If the answer is yes, then I'll look for a brand that's certified. So I can put together like a bit of a list for you, because I feel like, you know, it's Monday night, my brain's a little fried. But there's a ton of like sustainable marketplaces that I can point you to. If any of you guys use Instagram, give Know the Origin a follow on there. We post every day like new brands that we're finding and loving. I'd say probably at the moment I've got like a database of about 2,500 brands, so there are like a lot out there. It's just like obviously takes a lot of time like finding them, but that's where I guess I have the best job in the world, because I spend my day like searching for like cool sustainable stuff. So I'm happy to like share loads of links after this.
That would be really cool. Yeah, if you could maybe email them to me, and then I'll sort of share them out. Me and Sheila will send some emails around, but that would be really good. And just lastly, I'm just going to get the question up. So you've talked a lot about sort of buying new things, or but that all requires sort of research and money. What would you recommend to people if they're struggling with money, or they just honestly don't have enough time to do research into more ethical brands? What do you suggest for that?
Well, obviously there's like your friends around you probably have a lot of the things that you're looking to buy. I know, like, whether I like it or not, my sister swaps and borrows a lot of my possessions. So I think it's just like, actually, before you're going to buy something, just like seeing if there's people around you that have that thing, because actually you can get a lot more newness that way, and it doesn't actually cost anything, unless your friend is a bit stingy and charges you to borrow it. But I think swapping's amazing, like mending, like I'm like quite into like repurposing stuff, but I get that not everybody wants to do that. I think looking on apps like Depop, you can get like a lot of really cool secondhand items. I think often when people talk about sustainability, they say that like charity shops are the way forwards. And whilst I think charity shops are wonderful, I don't think they actually fix a broken system, because that item has still been made in a way that's not great. So I think, still looking for ethical brands where you can, and like they are more expensive. Is more expensive to buy something that people have been paid a fair wage. So I guess it would mean a sacrifice, like on our part, of buying less, but buying well. So yeah, I think swapping, mending, sharing, buying from charity shops, you can do. It's lots of brands out there.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. I'm sorry, I feel like I could ask you so many questions. You know just so much about everything to do with this. And so just thank you so much. I know you've been very busy over the last few weeks, and I know your company is going through some things at the moment, so just thank you. Thank you so much for coming and just being part of this, and particularly thank you to Freya and Ellie as well for asking questions and organising that as well. So big thank you for that. I think I'm just going to stop the recording.